My next guest, Wilson Cruz, is a pioneer of representation. In 1994, at only 20 years old, he made American television history as the first openly gay actor to play an openly gay series regular character in My So-Called Life. In the years since his groundbreaking debut, he's been an advocate for LGBT visibility in media, and he now stars in the Paramount Plus series Star Trek Discovery, where he plays one half of the first gay couple in the long-running franchise's history. Wilson, it's really an honor to meet with you. This has been a long day of talking to a lot of people. I'm a fan. My husband's a fan. But we're not doing a rah-rah day. This has been a day where we've been kind of looking at the question of yes, there's been a lot achieved in civil rights. Yes, there's representation in the media, but there's struggles going on in corners of the LGBT community that, to my mind, are pretty horrific. When you look at violence, you look at these issues, you have an important, visible role on these stories. And as you look at what you're choosing to be active about, the stories you're trying to tell, what should we share with our audience today?
Well, first of all, I want to say I'm so glad I was able to listen in on that last interview because I learned so much. And I'm so grateful to Dr. Ivy for that. But also, I wanted to say that another resource besides Dr. Ivy is Sid Ziegler and Outsports. And I think
great.
It's outsports.com. Anyway.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, for me, pride for me is always about looking back a little bit and seeing how far we've come and also acknowledging all the people who got us to this point. And I was listening to this podcast recently, and they were looking back at the people who started, who really started the movement. And there was this African-American woman, her name is Ernestine Eckstein, and this was in before Stonewall, so early 65-ish. And you can hear her in this interview after protesting in front of the White House, talking about the fact that at 22 years old in the mid-60s, she had never seen or heard of another lesbian, let alone another lesbian of color. So when I think about Ernestine Eckstein, who didn't relate to anyone, didn't have anyone representing, didn't have anyone to point to allow her to understand her own humanity, but yet found the strength to protest and understand that people needed visibility of this community. It moves me and inspires me. So when I think about what we're doing on Star Trek Discovery, where it's not just Anthony Rapp and I, it's Anthony Rapp and I in this relationship. It's Ian Alexander and Blue Del Barrio, who play non-binary and trans characters. There's Tig Notaro, who plays a lesbian character. And we're saying that not only should you see us and appreciate us as part of this LGBTQ community, but we're saying we have always been here and we will always be here, so that there will be no more Ernestine Ecksteins who are looking for some sign of their humanity in media. We save lives when we allow our community to see themselves and have their lives reflected back at them. And part of what needs to where we need to progress is the fact that we need to see a diversity of images within the LGBTQ community, because even today, the predominant view of LGBTQ folks that we have in media is still gay white men feed, just like you. And so we want to see more people from throughout our community, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, trans, who look like the community itself. And so that means seeing more Black, brown, indigenous, and immigrant stories, people searching for asylum, because around the world, people are looking to American media to see themselves and understand that they're not alone.
Look, I think what you just said is so profound. And I'll just share a personal story, because there used to be a time for people to kind of look at how this has evolved. One of my best friends in college is Darren Star. Those of you may know him from Beverly Hills 90210 and Sex and the City and Melrose Place. And when Melrose Place brought on the first gay character, white gay men like me had not seen ourselves on the screen in TV, and it was a big deal. And it was at the GLAAD Media Awards. I know you're very involved as national spokesperson for GLAAD. It changed it. It changed the vector for so many people at that time, and it's just, I think, unforgivable that it's taken decades to get so many more people, seeing themselves on screen from the LGBTQ community. I think it's happening, but we have to admit it took way too long for it to happen. So very, very powerful. You were the Grand Marshal of the New York City Pride Parade. How was that?
Well, it's this year. I'm the Grand Marshal, or one of the Grand Marshals this year.
Yeah.
But it's all virtual. So the virtual march takes place on Sunday.
It hasn't happened yet?
No, it's this weekend, Pride weekend.
Okay, all right. Well, it shows you how out of touch I am. Well, great. And so, what are you going to do? Give us a little, preview.
Well, there is a whole pre-recorded program. I threw in a wave or two. I wore my sash. I'll show you my sash, in case you don't. So I wore my little sash, There is a virtual march, and we did a whole bunch of pre-recorded content for that. And then there's a street festival that's taking place in the city from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., I believe. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the city. But I've been, doing the press tour and bringing attention to Pride and to New York City Pride, and that's kind of been my my job this year.
Well, it's on your Twitter. It's on your Twitter feed right up there at the top. Grand Marshal, you're very proud of it. Look, I think it's great. I mean, do you get a chance? I mean, I always wonder when people have kind of reached a level of kind of celebrity status, how you find your grounding. I mean, I was shocked and really upset about the Trevor Project's findings that so many young LGBT youth have thought about suicide. These are horrible, toxic times, and I know that you're trying to sort of deal with that. It's a big question, I suppose, to ask. How do you ground? I mean, do you go out and ever get a chance to meet some young people in New York and others, and and give them? I don't know how to give them hope. How can you bottle and give kids hope so that they understand that the future will be better and not worse?
Well, I think part of what I do personally is sit on the board of GLSEN. I sit on the national board of GLSEN, which is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Educators Network. And our mission is to make every school in this union a safe space for LGBTQ students. Because for me and for GLSEN, the key to an LGBTQ student fulfilling their potential starts at school. And for many of our students, home is how can I put this? A less than desirable place to be a lot of the time. And during this pandemic, there was another pandemic of young people who were at home under really dire circumstances and didn't have the outlets that they had for support, which they usually receive at school. So for me, it's really about setting up our kids to succeed. I don't want any of these kids to grow up and be 22 years old and say, I didn't understand that I'm human and that I'm perfect exactly as I am. I want them to know that now, and I want to invest in their futures.
How do you think the state of Hollywood is now? We've had a few years where questions about racism, structural racism in Hollywood, in the roles of their sexual harassment and discrimination and violence with the Harvey Weinstein issues going on. Do you feel as if characters like yours are going to become more the norm? And do you think overall in the industry it's cleaning itself up?
I think the industry is in a transitional moment. I think it's looking at itself and seeing that too many of us who come from marginalized communities are not in positions of power. We are not content creators to the level that our white counterparts are. So I think at the moment we're seeing a lot of search for talent of color and who will give us those stories that we long to see, right? I think part of the problem is that people write what they know. So if you're not hiring people who know different things, you're going to continue to see the same thing over and over. And that's kind of what we've seen on television, on television and in film. So I think when we diversify the people who get to tell stories, who will cast them with people who look like them and tell stories that speak to their lived experiences, we're going to see a more diverse media landscape. And I think
and just
that's
finally,
happening as we speak.
Yeah, finally, Wilson, I know this is going to be like a, fan club question, but, George Takei, I used to run with George Takei in Front Runners many years ago. And George is just this lovely, wonderful activist as well. He didn't play a gay character on Star Trek. I think he really wishes he could have, but I'm wondering if you've talked to him, and I wonder how jealous he is that you according to one Yahoo line, you get to play the queerest person in the history of TV. And so I'm just interested in whether you've talked to George at all about this.
We're bringing you the queerest Trek in history.
Yeah, queerest Trek. Yeah, exactly.
But I've known George Takei for years, even before I was a part of the Trek universe, because when I was the national spokesperson at GLAAD, he was very active with us.
Right.
And he actually received our highest honor the last year that I was there. But he has been a huge support. He was actually, if not the first, one of the very first people who tweeted out their support and reached out to Anthony and I personally. He's been an incredible support to us. So I think he's living vicariously through us. And we're happy that he's doing it.
Well, George and Brad Takei are a great couple in this, and he's been fighting anti-Asian discrimination, anti-gay discrimination, anti-LGBT discrimination across the board for folks there, and I'm glad to see that you're doing the same. So Wilson Cruz, actor, producer, Grand Marshal, next week of the New York City Pride 2021. I can do that. And I used to have pointy ears too. But anyway, Wilson, great to talk to you. Thank you so much for helping to anchor our great conversation on unfinished business in the LGBTQ world. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Happy Pride to everyone out there.